Good morning. Would you like some bread? That's a girl. Kangaroos for breakfast. What about you? There you go. I was just scrolling through my YouTube in the morning, and I see that a man called Donald Trump is describing the select committee in Congress that's investigating the events of the 6th of January 2021. They're being described as a Kangaroo Court, as if that's some kind of an insult. Now, I lay a bet that anybody who thinks a Kangaroo Court is a bad thing assumes that a Kangaroo Court jumps to conclusions which are invalid. And in my experience, long experience, that's not how kangaroos do things. This little lady used to have a cousin whose name was Rowan of Rin. And Rowan of Rin came back from his journeyman years, so he was probably 5 years old maybe, just about ready to become a big boy. And he found that his mother and his aunties were all eating bread. And as a grown-up, he had to learn to do what he'd only ever seen swamp wallabies do when he was a little fella. Just hang on, I'll get another slice. So Rowan came late to the practice, but he took it up and he became pretty good at it. And like Princess here, when he was freshly arrived or a little bit hungry, he had no problem hopping up onto the deck to say good day. And not only did he hop up onto the deck to say good day, he would also scratch at the door. And when I tell people that a kangaroo used to scratch at the lintel over the top of my door, they think I'm telling lies. But if we turn around, these are the fingernail scratches left by Rowan of Rin, who hasn't been seen for 4 or 5 years. So he's obviously dead. He's either been shot in the field or shot again in the field actually, or he's died on the bitumen on the tarmac arena. Run down while he was blinded by the lights at night. But anyway, there was a night when I heard gunfire in the paddock across the other side of the road, of the boundary fence, out on the sheep farm. And that morning Rowan of Rin showed up as usual at sunrise, scratching on the door. And he used to stand here on the deck, and when I opened the door he'd bow down and cover his balls with his claws as I put bread into his mouth, just like Princess more or less does, only she's got no balls to cover. And he bends down, and on his left ear, halfway from his head to the tip on the top side of the ear, there was a half-moon shaped bullet hole, still bleeding. So the gunfire at 3 o'clock in the morning had been Rowan of Rin being shot in the ear by a bullet that almost missed him. And he didn't decide that a human had nearly killed him and I'm a human and therefore he should come up here and kick me into the middle of next week in hospital with a freshly fixed colostomy done by a kangaroo's toenail. Oh shit, no. Rowan of Rin didn't go in for collective guilt. Rowan of Rin didn't go in for collective punishment. Rowan of Rin knew that I was not the human who had shot at him. Rowan of Rin. What he did was he come up here and he showed me the bleeding bullet hole in his ear. And he treated me like he always treated me, the family's pet tame human. So I have had kangaroos grievously assaulted by members of my species, and they judge me to be innocent of all offence, and they continue to treat me like a good bloke. So that's what happens in a kangaroo court. All the evidence is considered, And eventually, the hoppities form a position and come to a judgment. And that's how they treat you ever afterwards. If I was to reach out and try and touch one of these, they would think that I was breaking the code, ignoring the taboo against bodily contact across species. And they wouldn't talk to me again for weeks, if ever. So that's what happens in a kangaroo court. Nobody jumps to conclusions or rushes to judgment. You get actual justice that's a whole lot better than the stuff meted out by a lot of people. If you could teach the Palestinians and the Israelis that collective guilt and collective punishment is a bullshit fucking Nazi of an idea, then they would be a lot happier in how they live side by side. So there you go, and now you know. That's what goes on in a kangaroo court. Warbles on what to YouTube. Ciao.